Hi, I'm Lindy Goodall, Lindy G Embroidery. Today we're going to do some piecing in the hoop. All of these blocks were pieced in the hoop from my new collection, Cabin Fever. There are 20 designs. 2 of them are borders. The rest are based on the log cabin quilt. And you can see that we've got some crazy patch down here at the bottom. There are 4 of those. And those can go well combined together. The rest you might want to use independently or combine them any way you want. Some of them have small feature areas great for having little embroideries or featuring a special piece of fabric. So you can have a lot of fun with these. Don't think that you have to create some gigantic quilt. You can make little projects with these. They're great for placemats, for feature blocks on the back of a jacket or a vest, or say a table runner or a pillow. And here you can see that I've used this block and I've made 4 of them, and I've just repeated them around into sort of a pinwheel design. And that's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you how to piece this block in the hoop. The collection comes with a fully illustrated 7-page PDF that you can print off that shows you how to piece the block. General instructions for the blocks. There aren't ones for each block. Once you know how to do one, you can figure out how to do all of them actually. They also come with pattern pieces. So you'll have a full-size block and you'll have pattern pieces that are full-size. When you print these from Acrobat, make sure that scaling is set to none. There's a 1-inch square here that you can use to measure, because if you're using these to cut your pieces and you haven't printed it accurately, these won't be accurate either. This full-size pattern piece shows you the order in which the pieces are laid down. This template page shows you the fabrics and their relative sizes. So what I've done is I've cut strips, and let me show you that. I've used those pattern pieces and I've taped little pieces of fabric down so that I know which fabric strip goes with which part of my design. Now what I did too is I did not cut out these shapes. I just cut strips 1/8 of an inch wider than this, and then I just cut them. You can see that I've organized my strips. I've cut all my strips, and I've cut a wider one for my triangle. And when you cut this triangle, you want to make sure that this side and this side are on the straight of grain and that your bias is along here. You don't want to be cutting them like this. The next step is to organize all your little pieces. So I've got them all organized so that they're in the order that they're going to be sewn in relationship to the block. And now I'm ready to go to the sewing machine and piece my block. Before I do that, let me show you what the final block looks like. So here's my block. And the neat thing about this block is, depending on how I orient these, I can have a totally different design. So you can have some really interesting things going on with these blocks. This is sort of a pinwheel in the sky kind of motif. So let's see how to assemble the block. Here we are at the machine, and you can see I've already sewn the first 2 color changes. I've hooped a heat fusible tearaway, and I have the heat fusible side up. What that's going to do is allow me to stick the fabrics to this with a little applique iron, and I don't have to use any sprays. I'm not a big fan of using sprays if I don't have to, and if we were going to use spray in this process, we'd have to take our hoop out every single time and spray away from our machine. This way we don't have to take our hoop out. These lines will show me exactly where I need to place my fabrics. These are the seam lines for my pieces. These aren't the edges of my fabric. If you've ever done foundation piecing or paper piecing, then this is analogous to your printed pattern. So we're going to use this to place our designs. Next thing I'll do is I'll just put this in the machine, and you can watch. My hoop is in the machine, and I'm ready to sew. I have all my pieces laid out and organized, ready to place. I have an applique tacking iron ready to use. Remember, I said that we were using a heat fusible stabilizer. The applique tacking iron will help hold the fabric in place while we sew and keep our fabrics from wrinkling. Another thing that can keep your fabrics from wrinkling is to starch them. These have not been starched, so we'll just see how good they work. Now these designs are a little bit larger. If you have a smaller hoop, you can scale them down. You can scale them up. Because they're just straight stitch designs, they're going to scale pretty much okay. You will need to adjust the size of your pieces. So let's get ready to place our first piece. Our first piece is going to go right here. You can refer to your pattern piece to know where they go. You can also feel the stitching lines, and these stitching lines, remember, are your seam lines. So I like to have it outside the edge on these outer sides because that's going to be my cutting line. So I'll place my first piece. It always goes face up, press it in place. Don't let your iron touch your presser foot, especially if it's plastic, because it can melt it, and it will cause a little nick on there. It can snag your thread. Place the other piece. All other pieces go face down. And I'm feeling for where that seam line is. So I want that at the 1/4 inch mark. Once the seam sews and the machine moves to the next position, I'm going to flip over my piece of fabric, finger press it open, and then I'm going to tack it down with the tacking iron. Now I've cut these pieces bigger, and you can see that I'm extending way over more than a 1/4 inch. If I match my next fabric up here, I could easily end up sewing the seam line there, and then when it flips over I won't have enough. So pay attention to the seam line and not the edge of the fabric. You can cut your fabrics as you go, because you might want to trim off that excess there, or you can wait till after the fact. As you start working, pay attention to the reference of your presser foot to the edge of the fabric. It will help you know when you have your fabric in the right place. Continue placing fabrics and sewing. With this next piece, you want to make sure you know where the seam line is so that you don't get it too far over. So there's our design. We're ready to remove it from the hoop. So here's the back of my finished piece. And the next step would be to use a rotary cutter and a ruler to cut on these outside lines. Once I've done that, I have this, and I can flip this open like this so that my fabric is folded over my other side, and I'll use my rotary cutter and my ruler to cut off this part here. So my finished blocks look like this. To make my pillow top, all I've done is sewn a 1/4 inch seam here, done the other pair, put those together, sewn them, and then added some borders to the size of my pillow top. Very easy. I hope you've enjoyed this quick project, and I hope you'll try out the blocks that are on this collection.